Good morning. This is Dan Tokar at the Willow Forge in Shepherdstown, West Virginia. I had a request to sort of do an overview of the layout of the forge and how the shop is set up. And things are, of course, a mess, as they always are. But what you have on this side is the big anvil and Scott's stake anvil, and the seldom used larger tools that fit the big anvil, and tongs that are of weird shapes that don't get used very often. The forge does not have a fire pot. That is fire brick and castable refractory with a cast iron grate at the bottom. Underneath, a little hard to see, it's just steel pipe, and it's hooked to a Champion number 400 blower. The hoodless forge is one of the standard patterns for hoodless forges, which just basically requires that you have an opening that is roughly 1.5 times the area of the flue pipe. So I have a 12-inch flue pipe, and you need to have enough of a smoke chamber to allow dust and other things not to go up. But that's a 12-inch pipe, and you can see a regular stove pipe going out through the plate in the wall next to it. The racks of swages and hammers. The hydraulic, that's a 20-ton hydraulic press made by cutting a window out of a piece of I-beam and using the leftover web as the guide for the press. That's air over hydraulic, so I can hook that up to the air compressor and putter along. The sheet metal shear, Beverly shear on the floor for when I need it. The small cone mandrel and the swage blocks are on the floor on the stand, close enough that I can pull them out when I need them. The big cone mandrels sit over there because I don't use them very often. That's the long anvil. It's not really an anvil. I haven't welded it together and finished it out, but when that's done, that's going to be a 900 or 1,000 pound anvil. It's got a face that's 46 inches long if you count all the way to the end of the horn. But anyway, steel pipe with flanges securely bolted into the concrete floor with 6 half-inch fasteners. The pipe is filled with scrap iron, little bits and pieces, which helps deadening. The drop hammer, you can see, is set up so that it's close enough to bring hot work over or just to be used by itself cold. The trip hammer is set off on an angle. All of the tongs and again swages and hardies and other tools up on the wall, those are the ones that get used the most often. What I think of as the Apprentice Anvil, the beat-up anvil, is set up currently at the forge. You'll notice I put this rod across from the forge to the anvil, and one of the important considerations is that your anvil is at the correct working height for you, which is if you're standing next to the anvil and you make a fist and your arm is hanging naturally at your side, your knuckles will be about at the level of the face of the hammer. And you take that measurement, set your anvil up, and then the railing on the forge should be at the same height. So if you need a little help with a long rod, keeping it from flipping out of the fire, or if you've turned it around and are working, you'll notice that that rod lies perfectly flat on the anvil. All right, and as I said, no fire pot. That is castable, refractory, and a cast iron grate. I do get little bits of slag and clinkers, which I chip off every now and then. But generally, I can keep that very clean. It might be that the quality of my coal is fairly high. I get maybe a cupful of clinkers out of an entire day of forging, and I go through maybe a five-gallon bucket of coal a day forging. Depends a little bit on what I'm doing. And as I said, the reason you have that tall column for the opening in the hoodless forge is so that the fly ash and things can fall down and be scoopable. You can actually use that for when you're annealing or normalizing things. But I save it and put it in another bucket to use when I'm annealing things. But you don't want all that stuff to settle out in the flue pipe. It's much better to have it here where you can get it out. There's the working end of the hydraulic press. And looking in the other direction, you can see short stock, fire extinguisher, stands. You'll see the workbenches further down, which are of course junked up at the moment. The lathes and the milling machine and the surface grinder are covered up, and they're in the distance there. And then the other lathes and the small milling machines are covered up over there. There's even a shaper under there. There is the stand that has the smaller sheet metal stakes and things that might get used on a regular basis. The antlers are just pulled out at the moment because one of my guys, one of the students here, was going to make some knives for his brother for hunting season, and so we've pulled antlers out for handles. So that blue box is full of knife handle material. The lesser used, more sheet metal knocking things. Ammo cans are great for storing small parts, and if you actually put a label on them, you can find things. So I'm quite fond of containerizing things that are either materials or things that you need to hunt for. There are a couple of electric kilns sitting on the shelf there that can be pulled out and used. Jewelers' rolling mills. The big tumbler for polishing brass. More windows. You'll notice the grating over the windows. I had a problem with kids breaking windows for a while, so you get a grate over the window and that helps with that. Yep, around on this side. More ammo cans full of stuff. More handles, handle materials. Filing cabinets are a great way of putting tools away. Like that top one, if you can read that label, that's leather tools. So a lot of my skivers and small leather tools end up in there. Yeah, that's some hickory that we split out for handle material that hasn't quite gotten processed far enough yet. Spring swages for the trip hammer and the anvil. And again, things are kind of junked up, which is normal. The little flat files that you can use for putting files. You see cabinets. So anyway, it's I'm not quite sure what's interesting. It's just this is the current way the shop is set up, and like anything, it has its advantages and disadvantages. One of the things I can show you with the vise is that it's set up in a very particular place. that if you have a long rod, I have it angled past the trip hammer in that direction, and in the other direction it aims off and points toward that filing cabinet, so I have a clear space. So theoretically I can have a 15-foot long bar in the vise and have clearance for it, though I seldom ever need anything that long. But it's not just an accident to have a vise with clearance. You need to actually sort of plan that out. Anyway, that's the short note for the day. Bye.